Here's what makes Antonio Brown's story different from every other NFL cautionary tale. It's not that he threw it all away. Plenty of guys flame out. What makes AB different is that at every single crossroad, every moment where he could have gone left, chosen the easier, smarter, more sustainable path, he went right. Every single time. 7 Pro Bowls, 4 first-team All-Pro selections, over 12,000 receiving yards, a Super Bowl ring, and at his peak, he was the most complete wide receiver on the entire planet. And now he's on house arrest in South Florida, passport confiscated, facing up to 30 years in prison. This isn't a story about bad luck. This is a story about a guy who kept choosing chaos when he didn't have to. And somehow, that makes it even more tragic. Now let's go all the way back. You can't talk about the fall without understanding how high he actually got, and more importantly, how he got there. Antonio Brown grew up in Miami. His father was an arena football legend. They called him Touchdown Eddie Brown. Football was always going to be a part of his story, but the path to the NFL was genuinely messy. He got expelled from Florida International before ever playing a college game, bounced around, and eventually ended up at Central Michigan as a walk-on. Not recruited, not on scholarship, a walk-on. A guy betting on himself because no one else would. And he delivered. By the time he left Central Michigan, he held school records with 305 receptions, 3,200 receiving yards, and 22 touchdowns. The most anyone had ever produced there. Still though, scouts weren't convinced. The consensus coming out of the 2010 draft was a 5th round or 6th round pick at best, and Pittsburgh took him at pick 195. He had to fight for everything, every single step. And here's the thing, that chip, that drive, it made him. From 2013 to 2018, Antonio Brown averaged 114 catches, 1,500 yards, and 11 touchdowns per season. Not in one special year. Every year for 6 straight years, nobody in the NFL was doing what he was doing. He was the engine of the Pittsburgh offense, one of the most reliable players in the league, and by all accounts, a maniac in the film room and weight room. The hunger that came from being overlooked made him elite. And then that same hunger, that same refusal to accept any limits, started eating at everything else. The Steelers era doesn't end with a trade. It ends with AB slowly, deliberately making it impossible for Pittsburgh to keep him. Conflicts with Ben Roethlisberger, reports of a locker room tension, a missed playoff walkthrough, drama became routine. Pittsburgh put up with it because the production was undeniable, but there was a ceiling on how much chaos even a winning organization will absorb. By 2019, he wanted out. The Steelers traded him to the Oakland Raiders, and Brown was handed a massive contract and a genuine fresh start. He torched it within weeks. First became the helmet saga. The NFL had updated its safety standards, and Brown refused to wear any league-approved helmet, only his old one, which no longer met the rules. He threatened to retire over it. He filed a grievance. He held out of practice while the team waited. Eventually, the league denied his appeal, and he had no choice but to comply. But weeks of camp were already gone, and the relationship was already strained. Then came the frostbitten feet. Brown had climbed into a cryotherapy tank without the proper protective footwear and injured both feet badly enough to miss time. It would be almost funny if it wasn't burning millions of dollars in guaranteed money. Then the final act. He posted a release request on Instagram. The Raiders, completely fed up, cut him before the regular season even started, and he had walked away from most of his guaranteed money without playing a single game for that team. Then the Patriots signed him, and he played 1 game before being released again. It was because of some legal allegations with his former personal trainer. Brown denied everything, and the situation was eventually settled out of court, but the NFL had seen enough. He was suspended, and teams that had quietly been interested went completely silent. One controversy they could explain. 2 controversies starts to look like a character verdict. And here's the crossroads again. The path back to football for Antonio Brown was simple. Stay quiet, stay clean, let the suspension run out, and come back and play some football. He had the talent, teams would have taken the call. He couldn't do it. After sitting out most of 2019 and all of 2020 under suspension, Brown signed with Tampa Bay in October of 2020. Tom Brady had vouched for him personally, and Brady believed in him. He gave him a home. Literally. Brown was living at Brady's house, and for a stretch, it actually worked. Brown won a Super Bowl with the Buccaneers, catching a touchdown from Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. For the first time in years, the football was louder than the noise. He re-signed. He had another chance to just be a football player. Then came January 2022, a game against the Jets, and one of the strangest moments in modern NFL history happened. Reports indicated Brown and the coaching staff had clashed over his ankle. He felt he was being pushed to play through an injury and wasn't being heard. Maybe that's true. Maybe maybe he had legitimate grievance. But what he did was take off his jersey, shoulder pads, and gloves and walked off the field while the game was being played. Not a conversation with the coach, not a halftime exit. He jogged to the end zone, acknowledged the crowd, and disappeared into the tunnel in front of millions of people. That was the nuclear option when a dozen smaller ones existed. That's the pattern. That's always been the pattern with Antonio Brown. The Buccaneers released him days later. Tom Brady, his advocate, his friend, went public with a statement. If you read between the lines, it really isn't about football at all. He said everybody should do what they can to help him in ways that he really needs it. He then added on, "We all love him. We care about him deeply, and we want to see him be at his best." That's a wellness statement. That's a man watching someone he cares about spiral and not knowing how to stop it. And that was the last time Antonio Brown ever played in the NFL. Here's where it stops being a football story and becomes something harder to watch. Post-retirement, AB was everywhere online. Music, social media meltdowns, feuds with anyone who'd engage. He had the platform, the fame, the name recognition, and seemingly no structure around any of it. In 2023, he took majority ownership of the Albany Empire in the National Arena League. Within months, the league expelled the team for failure to pay dues. Players spoke out about missing paychecks. The whole thing collapsed publicly. One more venture that burned harder than it should have and left people worse off for it. Then came the financial numbers. In May of 2024, Brown filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in Florida, disclosing just $50,000 in assets and nearly $3 million in liabilities. $80 million down to $50,000, people hear that and assume it's just reckless spending. But the real story is a lot messier than that. When Brown went to Oakland in 2019, he should have received $30 million guaranteed that season, but he ultimately earned $138,000. And the New England deal evaporated after one game. He owed over $1.2 million to a truck driver he'd been accused of assaulting, plus civil judgments he couldn't pay and credit card debt that was stacking. Legal fees from years of lawsuits, fines, conduct penalties. Every controversy had a dollar amount attached to it, and they all came due at once. The money didn't disappear on a yacht in chains. It got litigated out of existence, one bad decision at a time. A judge converted the bankruptcy to Chapter 7 liquidation in July of 2025. Full liquidation, no restructuring. By December of 2025, he was required to surrender his $4 million mansion in Fort Lauderdale. By March of 2026, it was listed on the market. The house, gone. The money, gone. May 16th, 2025, outside an Aiden Ross celebrity boxing event in Miami. Brown got into a fistfight with a man named Zul Karnain Kwame Nantembu. Sorry if I mispronounced that. What happened next is contested, but what's on the video isn't. Footage showed Antonio Brown punching the man, then appearing to take a security officer's gun and run in his direction. 2 gunshots were fired. Brown posted on social media that night claiming he was jumped and people were trying to steal his jewelry. He made no mention of the gunshots. Then he got on a plane to Dubai and spent nearly 6 months there while an arrest warrant sat waiting for him back at his home. His attorney says he had a legitimate business in Dubai going back years. Prosecutors alleged something different, that Brown went to a country that he believed he couldn't be extradited from, then flaunted his presence over there on social media. U.S. Marshals tracked him down anyway. He was apprehended in Dubai and brought back to the United States in November of 2025. He pleaded not guilty to second-degree attempted murder. His defense team has filed motion to dismiss, citing Florida's Stand Your Ground law, arguing Brown had reasonable feared for his life and the shots were fired as warnings. The prosecution says he chased the man down the street and opened fire. He's facing up to 30 years in prison if convicted. I want to be careful here because it would be easy and lazy to just call Antonio Brown a bad person and move on. Reality is more complicated than that. He came from nothing, he outworked everyone, and he made it to the absolute top of one of the most competitive sports leagues in the world. There's something genuinely worth respecting in that part of the story. Antonio Brown walked through every exit door backwards. The talent was real and the talent was real. The hunger that built him was real, but at every single crossroads, Pittsburgh, Oakland, New England, Tampa, the bankruptcy, the walk-off, Dubai, there was a path mark stability and there was a path mark failure, and he chose failure every single time. One thing that I haven't mentioned in this video is that a lot of people suspect all these actions come from a thing called CTE, which if you saw how hard Antonio Brown was hit throughout his NFL career, it wouldn't be crazy to assume that. But of course, we are not able to know that he has that for sure. But whatever he has, I personally believe it's not an excuse for the crazy things that he's done off the field. Some people can't be saved from themselves. In Antonio Brown's case, that turned out to be the most expensive lesson in NFL history. Subscribe if you're new. I'll see you in the next one.